I'm Dr. Melissa Burns. It's my great pleasure to invite all of you to our Emerging Professionals Program track at the AOCA Annual Convention. We have curated educational content for this session specifically to address topics that we feel are relevant to osteopathic medical students, residents, and fellows. I'm very grateful to be joined today by my friends and my colleagues, Drs. David Cooper, Helen Bean, and Dr. Amanda Shackle. First up, we have Dr. David Cooper. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Alabama in Huntsville in 2017, followed by a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Alabama in 2018. He went on to work in an interventional pain clinic before completing a Master of Medical Science at LECOM in 2020, and then graduated from the Alabama College of Osteopathic Medicine as part of the class of 2024. He completed his intern year in preliminary general surgery at the Johns Hopkins Hospital and is currently a CA1 anesthesiology resident at Tulane University. His professional interests include medical education, mentorship, and expanding accessible resources to help guide and support medical students in pursuing a career in the realm of anesthesiology. He'll be speaking on DOs in the Match, landing anesthesiology as an osteopathic student. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cooper.
And I know there's lots of things, lots of questions. The main question you all have is, how do I match into anesthesiology? It's the main question we always have. You know, I thought about it as a first-year medical student. What do I need to do to be competitive in the match? And at that time, it didn't seem like it was going to be as competitive as it is now. Obviously, the field shifted quite quickly in 2023. And so I thought, you know, when I do mentorship, this is the questions people ask me most. What can I do to increase my odds? What can I do to make myself stand out? And so this is kind of an overarching PowerPoint, and it's going to touch on a lot of topics. Each of these topics you could probably go in hours at a time on a discussion, but I'm just going to give you the general information, all right? So let's see, what makes a competitive applicant? What do we think? Anybody have any thoughts, processes of what makes a competitive applicant? You can just shout it out. Grades, yeah. Test scores, yeah. That's research, yeah. It's all the things that you do on ERAS, right? You put them into the boxes, and it has all these certain things, extracurriculars, right? So yeah, research. It's research what makes a competitive applicant. Letters of rec, do you have really strong letters of rec? Do they make you stand out in the application cycle? Connections. Do you know people at institutions that you want to be at? You know, do you know program directors? Do you know faculty? Do you know residents that went to your medical school? Those are all connections that help. Medical school grades, right? You know, the grades are important, and a lot of the more allopathic schools are now pass-fail, but for us, you want to stand out a little bit more, and grades can help that. Personal statements, I think personal statements are important. I think people that don't put the effort in personal statements can really hurt you, and really great personal statements can help you. Sub-Is, I mean, that's a hot topic, and they're very competitive now. You know, in 2023, 2022, you could pretty much apply and get first dibs on wherever you want to go. Now you could shoot out 40 feelers, 40 applications, probably get 2 or 3. It's just very competitive. Board scores, right? That's what we're always thinking about. Step 1, step 2, COMLEX, all these scores, you know, they're the make or break, right? Extracurriculars, what do you have outside of medicine, or what do you do that makes you seem like a well-rounded individual? And then prestige, and for prestige, I include that because, you know, being at Johns Hopkins and working with students, I've realized that does have a factor in play on some program directors, what they think about their applicants. They've had residents from this program before. They know the quality of residents they're getting. And a lot for us as osteopathic students, sometimes that hasn't happened yet. So that can be a factor as well. So let's look at the data. Anesthesia is a data-driven specialty. We're looking at numbers every single day in the ORs and making informed decisions from that data we collect. So I like to go off the data. And, you know, it's not perfect, but it can kind of give you some information on what you need to do and what can help and increase the odds of matching. So how is anesthesiology trending for DOs? And so I started in 2023, and that's when I think it really had a big jump. So if you look here, there was about 172 programs, 1,600, you know, positions offered. There was one unfilled spot. I believe that year maybe it was an R spot. And then you look at how many applicants from the total applicant pool were DOs, 507, right? And then you look at how many people matched, 245. Even if you look at the overall match, it's about half as well, you know. And then we filled in, you know, 15% of the total match. Now let's look at 2024. The programs have increased, right? 178. If you look at the number of positions offered, those have increased as well. And I think at this time, people are realizing how competitive the field is becoming. And programs are like, oh, we can expand, we're going to fill. Programs that didn't have anesthesia programs at the time are opening. And then you see the applicants increase as well. So 566, right? And then 284 matched. Finally, 2025, programs increased once again. And there was a considerable increase in the number of positions offered as well. But you see the application pool has now dropped from the DO applicants, now 480. Why is that? I think people are realizing it's not a backup specialty. It's not, it's a competitive specialty. You need to have the scores for it, or people are dual applying as well now if they have to. I think just people are being given better information on what makes them competitive, or should they do other routes, you know, in medicine. So let's look at this as a whole. So in 2023, the match rate was 48.3%, right? Not great. It's actually been increasing, even though the competitiveness is increasing. So it's a match rate for DOs. In 2024, 50%, and most recently, 2025, 64%. And I think a lot of that is due to the application pool now. They're becoming smarter on whether this field's a good fit for them, are they competitive for this field, and you know, there's more programs opening now, which allows more availability as well. Even though the field is, I mean, at Tulane now, the medical school class, I think they have like 200 people. I think 35 people are applying anesthesia, you know, and back in the day, it was like 5 or 6. At my medical school, I was one of 4. So it's just becoming more and more sought after. So there was a study that came out in 2024 by Tricia Pendergast, who I believe is a resident of Michigan, Jed Wolpaw, who is a PD at Hopkins, who I know very well, and he's very informed, and Dr. Hofkamp, who is at a faculty at Temple. And they did the survey. They sent out a survey, and you know, with surveys, the response rate is tough, right? People don't like to fill out surveys. I don't either. But they got about 140 total responses, and out of those 140, 37 were DOs. I think a few of them did not finish the final criteria for the final cohort. So the total was 114 that matched, 23 that went unmatched, and out of that, 31 DOs matched, 6 did not. So about 19.4% did not match from that DO applicant pool. When you look at the total applications for the year, for PGY1 spots only, it's about 3,000. Quite a lot, right? But then you look at PGY2 spots, 2,000. It's only 1,000 less, and the spot amount is like 200, 300 spots. So you can just see people are now shifting to, they get into a different field, and they want to apply, or maybe they're reapplying. I know when I was at Hopkins, our spots were filled by the PD from the EM program at Hopkins, a faculty EM program director, like an APD from Hopkins for the EM program, and then my chief surgery resident, who was a PGY4. So it just shows that people are realizing maybe this isn't the right match for me, and they're going to anesthesia and they're loving the critical care aspect or other things that really fit with their lifestyle or their goals in medicine. And then at the bottom, you can see the total amount that matched for the PGY1 spots and then the PGY2 spots. So in this, that's just an overall data from here. The data they got from their application pool that they found was significant was, as everybody knows, step 2 score, right? So in the average group for the people that matched, they had their average score was about 252, plus or minus, you know. They had quite a larger range on that because it's not the end-all be-all, and some people have great CVs and not great scores, and I've mentored plenty of people, and they've matched outstanding programs, and their scores were not outstanding. And then you have the unmatched on average around a 245, the same, you know. And when you look below that, the people that matched got more interviews, right? And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. But it's not the end-all be-all, but that is just the average for those people. And then the people that went unmatched had about 6 interviews. And that's about the data that I've seen from people. You're looking around a good yield from your signals now, because you only have 15, right? Is like 8 to 10, 11's great too. But the most I've seen really is around 12, and those are outstanding applicants. So when you're sending out the signals, don't expect to get all 15. It's just not feasible with the gold and silver tiers. So the conclusion, you know, as I just stated, you know, people with a higher step 2 score match better. And then the one thing they did point out, though, the the DO match rate was much lower in the total overarching like ACGME data than what they got in their study. And I think due to that is because if people that didn't, people aren't filling it out, that didn't match, I could see that. It just really depends on who's filling out those surveys to get that data. And like I said, what does the study show us? What do I take from the study is? Match rate is higher for people that have a 250 plus. And we kind of know that. The average, everything right now is like 251. I think it goes up by 1 point almost every year. I think when I was in medical school, it was like at 247, and now it's gradually increased as people realize how important step 2 is and step 1 is pass fail. All right, so what do I have to tell you definitively? Please take step 2. I've had so many people reach out to me, hey, can I just get away with COMLEX? Do not do that. You're limiting yourself. You need to create the best odds for yourself. Please take step 2. I know 2 exams, double the money. I've been through it. It sucks. And now I'm with my MD counterparts. They're like, oh, you got to take 2 exams? Like, yeah, I did. It was great. And so then I thought, what do PDs think? What is important for them? And this kind of goes past sitting in the interviews, right? What makes you competitive after the interview? They sent you the interview, and now they've done the interview and all these things. And it kind of makes sense, right? They always harp on how good were you in the interview? How personable were you? What do people think about you? And how staff and other interviewers, et cetera. And I think what's really important too, if you look a bit further down, I know the font's a little small, but you can see that what is the feedback from the residents? And so that just shows that correlation between the importance of sub-Is, right? So on the left, you can see the amount of people that responded to that and said this is important, and then the importance ranking they gave it. And you can see at the top, it kind of correlates, makes that shape. There are some down below, like 3%, and they have a high, importance, but I don't really take that into it. It's like virtual rotations, which people, aren't really doing anymore now that COVID is in the past at this point. Like I said with the sub-Is, I think it's super important, and feedback from residents. I'm in that position now. Our PD asked us, hey, what do you think about a resident? Et cetera, et cetera. And I tell them what I believe and what I think is true because I want the best applicants that fit well with my program. So residents that like you are going to go to bat for you because they want those kind of people that they enjoy working with. If they're on a 24, if they're working nights and they have to work with a colleague, they want somebody they're going to enjoy that time with. So I think also, for me, what is really important is mentorship. I found my mentor about 4 years ago on social media, actually. My wife told me again, and I said, I don't need that. And she's like, I promise you can network. And I did what she said, and of course, my wife was right. She loves that. But since I found that mentor who is in an academic program, who's involved in the process and stuff, he gave me so much good advice. He gave me guidance. He gave me support. And he helped me when I had questions or anything like that. And he was always willing to put in the work because he knew I was willing to put in the work as well. It's not a one-way street. A mentor is not supposed to just do everything for you. You have to also provide in that relationship, just like a marriage, right? It can't be one-sided. So where to find mentorship? Because I get this all the time as well. Where can I find a mentor? My osteopathic school, we don't have a residency program linked to us. I don't know any anesthesiologists. It's an elective later. Where do I find it? And that's a question I get asked all the time. And like I said, so social media I think is a great outlet. It's easy, right? You just post. I literally posted, hey, I'm a DO applicant, really looking for anesthesia mentorship. I put my interests, academic medicine, things like that, and I got some feedback. And luckily enough, sometimes you're not going to get anything out of it, but what does it hurt, really? And for me, I got dividends from it, and I still talk to him daily and ask him questions. He's very big in research, so I can ask him research questions. I ask him life questions. He's my friend now, which is how that mentorship-mentee relationship should develop. Organizations, right? The AOCA has now created a way to get in touch with people that want to be a mentor. That's another option for you. Alumni. So I put Tulane there just because I'm there right now, but even when I was a medical student, people that had matched before me, I reached out, hey, what do you think about this program? I know you're there now. What do you think? And I know some people don't know everybody, and some people are a few years past, and you were on clinicals, whatever. But you can always ask your advisors, and I think they have all that data. I remember mine did, and she knew where everybody had matched, who we had alumni at. And you can ask for that and get their numbers, reach out to them, email them. And most people are going to reply. Some people are not, and that's just how it is. You can't expect everybody to respond to you. There's other programs like MSARF. I think that's a great application you can send out. Once again, that's free. You're not guaranteed to get it, but it's just another chance of getting a mentor, and it's with academic attendings all across the country that you can do research with. And then I think what's really important is clinical rotations. Even though, say, for me, I went to a private hospital. The anesthesiologist I rotated with private practice, but he still was my mentor in that side of things. And you're not all wanting to go academic medicine. Some people want to do private practice, and that's fine. And so it's good to have mentorships. And private practice, academics, you need multiple mentors because not everybody's going to fill those holes that you need. And I think sub-Is, when I went on sub-Is, I talked to a lot of faculty there and got to meet them, and that helped fill that void too of not having anybody from a residency program to give me advice. I think that's also something you should look at when you're doing sub-Is. So how important are sub-Is? Like I said, they're very important. And when I looked at the data, there's really no pure data right now for anesthesiology because it's just now shifted in the field of competitiveness, right? It's not plastic surgery or urology, which has been competitive for years now. But they did some studies, and it's pretty interesting, right? So they had 194 total matched applicants, 32% of that matched at a place they did a sub-I, quite high. And then when you take into account that their home program they also matched at, that's almost 50% of people matched at a program that they had relationships with, they had face-to-face time with, and it just shows the importance of that. And you can see the same thing for urology. It's a little higher, actually. And so for these competitive fields, getting face time and getting faculty to know you, know who you are, know how you work with others, it is almost more important than anything else. I think if you do outstanding on a sub-I and people love you, it can really overshadow some red flags on your application, like a low score, things like that, because people know, oh, I really like working with this guy, because we can make great anesthesiologists out of almost anybody, but personality is something you can't change for most people. So obviously sub-Is are important, and I put some little notes in here, just for people that are doing sub-Is, and I want you to put your best foot forward from day one. Know when to talk, when not to. I think anesthesia, it's great because you're going to work one-on-one normally with the residents in the OR. There's going to be plenty of time to talk. Don't ask me questions while I'm intubating a patient that I failed to ventilate or something like that. I've had terrible times where people are like, hey, what? And I'm like, just give me a second. Just know, and it's just common sense, right? You know when to talk. When people are sweating, when people are running around a little bit, you're asking for help, not the best time to ask questions. Show up early. Please show up early. Ask residents, because every academic institution or residency program is different, right? They set up differently. Ask first day, they're not going to expect you to know much. But, hey, what can I do? How do you label your syringes? Do y'all allow us to do the machine checks? What can I do? Can I set up the airway kit, et cetera? And find out what they do. Because when I walk in the room and a medical student has set up the room for me, and, they can't do everything, and I'm not letting them pull drugs, et cetera, but they've done the machine check for me. They've made me my syringes for the general stuff that we use in almost every case. And they've got some of the airway stuff. That makes my life so much more easy. And I really appreciate it, and I remember that. And like I said, anesthesiology is chill specialty. Work hard, be kind, show interest, and act normal, even when you're not. And as my chief says, he's like, hide your psychiatric issues for outside of work, because we all got some, but, act normal at work. And then, so how to prepare for sub-Is? I gave you a little bit of, some different avenues to go down. Anesthesia made it easy, simple book, you could read it in a day. Awesome. ACRAC, JED is outstanding, and that information, some of it's going to be above your head, but it is a golden resource. And finally, the CA1 Stanford Guide. I read it this year. Most CA1s read it. It's pretty much all-encompassing for what you need to know your CA1 year. And they update it yearly. So letters of recommendation. We'll get on that topic now. And I get a lot of questions about letters of rec. So what makes a strong letter of rec? Writers should always demonstrate familiarity. If they don't know your name, they misspell your name, or they say, it just shows to the reader, this person didn't know really anything about them, and they ask them for a letter, it can really hurt you. Writers should always be eager to write you a letter of rec. If you ask, I always approach, I had one on my sub-I, and I said, I was working with the APD for 2 weeks. I said, hey, after the end of my next week, could we meet? Because I would really love a letter rec. I'm an osteopathic student. I don't have any letter writers from the residency program, and I would really appreciate it. She said, of course. I would love to write you a letter. Now, she said, I don't know, maybe you should look, I'm willing to do it, but maybe you should look elsewhere. I would have looked elsewhere, because that means that letter is not going to be very strong, and that can hurt you very bad because you can't see those letters, right? You don't know what they put on there. And so I've heard horror stories of people being like, oh, they misspelled my name, or they said I wasn't a great applicant, or they didn't really enjoy working with me. And I think that's doing a disservice to the applicant, right? You should never want to, that's just ruining their chances of matching. I would just tell them, hey, I cannot write your letter. But those things have happened in the past. And then they always like to see, is there a statistic? And, it's biased, but if you can get a percentage, definitely for an academic writer, they are the top 10% of all the medical students I've ever worked with. That's really strong, right? From a person that works with residents and medical students day in and day out, for them to actually put a percentage, I think that can really help as well. And when I got my letter writer from Hopkins, she told me, hey, you're top 5% of people I've worked with. I'm going to put that on your letter. And people brought it up during the interview trail. And then like I said, I don't think it's an end-all be-all, but being a letter writer from a PD or APD that you work with on a sub, I think can give you a good impression on your application because it shows, hey, they worked with residents, because that's what they're really wanting to know. I had a letter from a private practice anesthesiologist. He's like, oh, he's awesome, he's amazing. But how is he with residents? How is he in an academic institution where, there's learning and there's things they have to do, QI projects, et cetera? Can I trust him to be a great resident? And it's a lot easier to believe somebody that's in a residency program than somebody that's not. And then, like I said, if they don't seem eager, look elsewhere. It's going to hurt you much more taking a letter from somebody than not having that extra fourth letter or something like that. So this research requirement, I get this question all the time, oh, I have no research, I'm an osteopathic student, I have no research. I didn't have much research either. I think I had one first author publication, that was it. And it wasn't like a super strong publication. Let's look at the data. That's, like I said, we'll keep going back to the data. So this is from the 2023 to 2024 first year residents. And you can see they've put in different categories, number of research experiences, number of abstracts, number of work experiences, volunteer experiences. And I think they get skewed a little bit because if you look at that 90th percentile, it's a lot, right? And those are the people that probably have research backgrounds, have done stuff before medical school, or they had connections, et cetera, and they're just pumping out these papers, et cetera. I don't believe that's end-all be-all. Most people I've talked to, even Hopkins, Michigan, these very academic places, they're like, oh, I had 2 or 3 publications, and they're like poster presentations, or, those are really their research experiences. So I don't think it's end-all be-all. I think as the field gets more and more competitive, it's just another way they can differentiate you, and it can help. But I don't think if you have no research, that's going to be the make or break. And there's certain programs that care more about it. There's certain programs that don't really care about it at all. And so you need to do your own digging and see what programs really care. And if that's what you want to do, research, then maybe you should look at programs that are really involved in that, like Stanford, which puts that CA1 guide out every year. So these are my takes. Research is not the end-all be-all for anesthesiology. As I said, with increasing competitiveness, there's a corresponding upward trend in research. And then, like I said, some programs are going to prioritize it more than others. And then I think what is more important than just pumping out a lot of papers is showing that you can finish a project from start to finish. It doesn't have to be a lot of projects, but I think if it's something you're passionate about, that you really enjoy, which is the project I did, I think it just shows, hey, I'm never going to have to worry about this resident finishing their QI project, or they're going to finish things that they start. And so it's just another indicator for how you're going to be as a resident. So what else? So we're not going to go into depth in this because you could talk for hours about personal statements, right? You can talk to hours what makes a good personal statement. Interviewing skills. Well, there's going to be a talk about it a little bit later, but interviewing skills is one thing that I tell this to everybody. The one thing you can improve upon after your application is sent off. Most of the time you're not going to be having an extra, maybe you'll get an extra paper or two, but most people are not going to be able to do that in that amount of time. From the amount of time your application is sent off to the amount of time you start interviewing. But your interviewing skills, you can improve upon drastically. And I know plenty of people, including myself, thought, man, I think I'm a good interviewer at baseline. You can be better, And there's things that you don't realize that when you do some mock interviews with people, and they'll let you know, hey, maybe you say a little bit too much, or maybe you stutter on these little things, or maybe that answer to that question wasn't the right one, And I would do mock interviews with multiple different people from all over. They don't even have to be in anesthesiology. But I think getting feedback from multiple people, working multiple times, it gets you ready. And I know some people are like, oh, maybe I'll schedule my interviews I'm not as interested in early. That's fine, but with how competitive it is, every interview is important nowadays. You can't squander an interview because you're like, oh, that's my work, my getting off the jitters interview, right? Signaling, obviously, hot topic, 5 golds, 10 silvers. We could talk, once again, about hours on how to prioritize your signaling, how to make it smart, how to increase your chances of matching, all those things. And then geographical preferences, I think now the signaling's around, they've kind of fallen out. They're not as important. You know, a gold and Union geographical preference, I don't think they care. You know, I've talked to plenty of PDs and they don't care about it really. You know, as long as you have a reason you want to be there, and now they've changed the ERAS to allow you to put a little blurb of why I signal this program. No more personalized statements for every single program, please. I have some people that did like 20. I was like, please don't do personalized statements for every single program. So any questions if we have time, which I'm not sure we do? No? Okay.
But if we have time, we can also roll it over until we're at the focus
Yeah.
statement, so you can certainly
And I'll be around and you can come ask me questions. And this is my email. If you have questions that you don't want to ask here or whatever, I always give my email out. I'll respond to you eventually. You know, residency is busy, but I'm normally, by the end of the week, I get back to everybody, okay? Well, I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much.